Hello and welcome to Runkle of the Bailey. My name is Ian Runkle. I'm a Canadian criminal defense and firearms lawyer. Today I want to talk about a story that's been in the news all over the place. I'll link one article in the description below, but it's all over the place. A real quick summary is that a shotgun was being sent by mail, and it's not clear at this stage, where the intended recipient was, but somehow it ended up getting misdelivered. Canada Post has indicated that this may be a situation where a shipping label gets stripped off of one package, and this happens sometimes by accident. I mean, with the volume of stuff that Canada Post moves, it's kind of amazing that almost all of it gets to its intended destination. But they're saying that, some machine ended up peeling off one shipping label, and then it ends up getting stuck onto another. This does happen sometimes. It's a rare event, but that's what Canada Post is suggesting is the likely outcome here. It then ended up getting delivered to a family who hadn't ordered it, and in fact, the recipient of the package was an 11-year-old. Now, they've posted pictures online that suggest that there was an 18-plus signature required label on this thing. I understand that there may have been two labels, and so there may have been some confusion there. But regardless, 11-year-old ended up with a shotgun and is to be commended because upon opening this package, the 11-year-old's response was to go, "Whoa, this is not for me," and to call an adult who was then able to deal with it in a more proper fashion. This is the right response. And, in terms of gun safety at appropriate ages, even if you're not a gun owner, if you see a gun, stop what you're doing and get an adult is an appropriate sort of response to this. Don't touch. Same way that you'd teach your kid not to touch, poisonous substances or anything like that. If they don't have the knowledge to deal with something and the maturity to deal with something, getting a parent is the right course of action. So good on the kid. Now, I will say that the number one question I've gotten is a tongue-in-cheek question, which is basically, why am I not getting free shotguns in the mail? And if a shotgun arrives, can I keep it? Because shotguns are expensive, and wouldn't we all like to get something expensive in the mail for nothing? And as it turns out, there are provisions in the criminal code that cover pretty much exactly this situation. Not just this situation, but they'd certainly include this situation. So let's have a look at the criminal code, because lots of people have sort of wondered, what do I do in this case? So section 105 of the criminal code is offenses related to lost, destroyed, or defaced weapons, etc. And losing or finding. So note, losing and finding are both in the same section. They're both covered by the same thing. And every person commits an offense who, having lost a prohibited firearm, restricted firearm, non-restricted firearm, prohibited weapon, prohibited device, etc., 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 including your licenses, registration certificates, etc., or having had it stolen from your possession, does not with reasonable dispatch report the loss to a peace officer, to a firearms officer, or to a chief firearms officer, or on finding one of these things, that they have reasonable grounds to believe has been lost or abandoned, does not with reasonable dispatch deliver it to a peace officer, firearms officer, or a chief firearms officer, or report the finding to a peace officer, a firearms officer, or a chief firearms officer. Note that there's two things. You can either deliver it or report it. Which is the smarter one to do? Probably just to report it. And I will give you a couple of reasons why. First, if you are saying, well, I'll just deliver it to a peace officer without reporting it, I will tell you that the police station is not going to be super thrilled if you show up with a firearm without any advance notice. In fact, their response will be quite the opposite of thrilled. If you walk into a police station with a shotgun, people are going to get real excited, and, they're not going to throw you a party. So don't do that. Call the police, tell them to come pick it up. That's just, it's more convenient in any event, but the other thing is that there isn't necessarily a provision here that guarantees you protection from the law for instance, transporting a prohibited firearm. Why would you want to take possession of something if you don't have to? if it may not be legal for you to have it. Keep in mind, and I've said this at several times, the police aren't necessarily your enemies, but they're also not necessarily your friends either. And so there is always the risk that you get charged with something, and that needs to be in your mind when you are communicating with the police and in your actions. You are probably less likely to be charged if you're calling the police and saying, hey, here's what's going on, come pick it up, rather than if you are delivering it. This is especially true if you're finding it in a situation like, let's say you're wandering through the woods, you're having, a little hike, and you find a handgun that's been chucked into the woods. Do you really want to put your hands on that? You got all those lovely little fingerprints at the at the end of your fingers. Do you want to start putting those on an unknown firearm that may have been used in unknown circumstances? No, you do not. So the reporting is generally the better approach. But the other thing is reasonable dispatch, which doesn't mean right this second. It gives you time, for instance, to make a phone call. This would be a great time to make a phone call to a lawyer to get specific advice, because depending on how you're finding it, you may want to approach things differently. Now, would finding encompass having something sent to you by mail? There is a legal question there, but probably would be my answer. Getting something shipped to you by accident is probably enough to count as finding, and you don't want to be the test case where this gets solved, because this may fall into the category of interesting legal questions, and of course, interesting, when said by a lawyer, means expensive. So assume finding would include getting this sent to you by mail. So you should contact the police and say, hey, I got this, or call a lawyer if this happens to you. But I would say that, you don't want to just take no steps and say, oh, free shotgun, awesome. Especially because this shotgun didn't just appear by magic. There is no shotgun fairy that is, sending shotguns to random people. This is not something Santa Claus is known to do. The Tooth Fairy also not sending out shotguns. Somebody sent this and somebody expected to receive it, which takes us to the other part of the can I keep it question, which is just the simple thing of, well, is it yours? Because the answer to that is probably no. This gets into complicated issues of property rights, because we think of property rights as being very simple. This is my can of pop, and that's real simple, and probably no one's going to show up and contest my ownership of this can of pop. But let's say I'm walking down the street and I find somebody's watch, and it's a gold watch. Do I own that watch at that point? The answer is a little bit. And what I mean by a little bit is that you acquire a small property interest in it, but a lesser property interest than the person who lost it. There may be a way that can eventually transform into a sort of full property interest, but that is a complicated issue that I will probably cover in another video. Regardless, if you get, a shotgun in the mail that you didn't order, there's people with better property interests in it than you do, or than you have. Number one, the sender, because they have agreed, almost certainly somebody's bought this shotgun and it's been sent by mail. And so the sender has agreed to provide this to a recipient. So that is somebody with a better property interest than you have. The intended recipient, similarly, is likely to have a better property interest than you have. And it's not yours. If you ordered a shotgun in the mail, you would be super upset if you didn't get it. You should try to make sure that ends up going to its proper destination. It's just the right thing to do. So you've got these, criminal provisions. The other question is, what happens if I order a shotgun and it doesn't arrive? Or even worse, what happens if I order a handgun online and it doesn't arrive because that handgun is now registered in your name? Well, same provision. If you order it and it doesn't arrive, that sounds to me like losing a firearm. You should, of course, if you are getting something sent to you, be taking avail of the tracking options just so that you can see where it is. And if it says that it's delivered and it didn't arrive to you, you're going to want to get in touch with the police, as well as Canada Post and whoever else, everyone involved in the transaction, in order to get them moving on that and try to get them dealing with it. Because particularly with something that is registered your name, the last thing you want for that is for it to show up at a crime scene, or in the waistband of a drug dealer when they get arrested, with whatever amount of drugs. You don't want that for a firearm that's registered in your name. So make sure you contact the police if that happens. This is, kind of a funny story when you're, talking about, hey, this gun going to the wrong place, but kind of not, because as much as this kid did exactly the right thing, somebody who's maybe a little less mature, a little less smart, might have done something like decided to go play with it, or, take it to their school or something like that. So I will say I have heard stories of people getting signature required packages of firearms that end up being left on their porch or the like. So there's always some, some questions there as to how this happens. Anyway, I'll leave it there before I before I say too much. Anyway, I did have a lot of questions, people asking, what do I do? People also sometimes ask this in different formats. I've had people say, I like to go magnet fishing off bridges. What happens if I pull in a gun? People say, I find all sorts of things in scrap metal buys or that kind of thing. What happens if one of them is a gun? So that's the section, the losing or finding section. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like this video. Please share it with your friends. Please subscribe to see more content. I also want to thank all of my Patreon supporters who help this channel grow and thrive. At the $50 level, Sir Daniel Wicks of Alberta, Jason Elliott, DMO, Canada's National Firearms Association, North Central Process Service, Kyle Martin, and Jean-Guy Toussaint. And at the $20 level, Dale Nesbitt, Cameron Johnson, and Andrew Elsich. At the $30 level, Sights and Arms Limited, as well as a number of you at the $10 level who will be in the crawl immediately following. Thank you for watching, and I hope this has armed you with knowledge.